I'm going to use some web forms to collect all of this data, again with workflow. And then the great thing about these web forms is that each participant in the process gets a unique view of what they care about and need to see. So oftentimes, you know, your finance people don't really care about the marketing or the QA data. So each person in this process will only see what they care about and the fields that they need to contribute. And so the idea here is all the color coding is just signifying a different department or a different group involved in the process. And then what we're gonna run, well, I'll share on the next slide. So this is an example, again, of taking those stage gate, that score model that I just talked about, those best practices, and putting this into our tool. So this is what this workflow, an overview of this workflow would look like inside Winshuttle. And so you see here that you've got these 4 different phases. And one of the things I just want to note here is that you can do parallel editing. So this, again, is going to help make things go faster. So I just mentioned, you know, the finance person probably doesn't necessarily care about the supply planning or the demand planning information. So all 3 of those tasks can be sent out in parallel. And then the way this is going to work is once those all 3 come back, then it's going to go be routed up to a master data person to review that and then post to SAP. So that's this top mustard colored square is where the master data sits. And then it goes on through the other phases as you see. I'm just going to walk you through a plan ready phase in this case because the others are very similar so that you can get the idea. So I'm now going to switch over. Let me get my, okay. So this is a form that I have up, and so this is that web form, and I'm going to play the hat of a couple of those different roles we just talked about. So this first person kicking this off would be probably a project manager, someone that's defining what the project is going to be, and then they're going to send this out to all the different business participants to have them add their data. So I'll just put in a project name. So we'll do iPhone 8 webinar is what I'm going to call this. And then you see here these red asterisks are actually designating required fields. And so you have also the ability to use drop downs. And again, all of these features are to help the user get the right data in at the right time. And then make the selection. And this information up here, what we're calling project metadata, this is again going to help drive that visibility and those reports that you may want to see later down the road. So however you want to slice and dice your information, we can put these, customize these fields to make sense for your business so that you have that ability later down the road. So typically what happens with the material master, so we're going to step through a finished good example, is most people copy from an existing material. And you can see here that this material number is required, but let's just say I don't know the SAP material number. So this section here is gives me the ability to query within SAP based on the selection I put in here. So I'm going to query based on a phone. And so when I click on this button, this is a live pull directly from SAP, from our system. And you can see here, so I have some iPhone 6s that I may want to copy from. So I'm just going to choose one of those. And when I make a selection here, then it pre-populates that material number. And then at this point, what I'm going to do when I click on this read button, again, this is going to be a live pull from SAP, and this is going to pull in all those attributes for that material master. Now, you won't necessarily see them on this view, but later on when I show the other business folks that are going to participate in the workflow, this is when I pre-populated their form. And then this can be set up a number of different ways, but the idea is just to hit SAP one time and pull it all in. All right, so I've got the material number I want to copy from. And so now this is where I want to put in those 12 new finished good materials. And I have a table here that allows me to do that. And I can add new items here. But what I may actually have is a spreadsheet. Most of you guys are in this world. So if I have a spreadsheet here with the list of all the materials that I want to add, I can actually upload that directly into my form. So I'm just going to click on this and I'm going to choose that file that I just showed and basically dump that into this form. And this table here that we're looking at is what Winshuttle calls a smart table. We do have a patent pending on this, and this is the table that allows us to do parallel editing. And so a couple of things I just want to point out here, you see some red errors. So we have the ability to add business rules is what I'm going to call it, but basically rules and validation on the data. And this is over and above any SAP rules. So you'll see later on, we're going to check things against the SAP system. But oftentimes we see people may have a drop down in SAP that may show 30 or 50 items, but you really only want the business selecting 5 out of those values that are in SAP. So this is where you can really lock that down and help provide guidance to your users so they're only able to select the right data. So by putting in some of these business rules, you can see I had an invalid option here. And I need to correct that. But I also have another error, which you can't see. And so one of the things that Winshuttle does, again, to make this a little bit easier to deal with, because you may have a lot of data in this form, is what we call pagination. So there's just different pages. And I can click on this to say, well, where's my other error? I can go directly to that. And it can take me to the page where the error is, and you can easily see. And so in this case, as you know, most people know the description in SAP only allows 40 characters, so I've got something that's too long. So I'm just going to remove that, and then that error goes away. So again, these rules can help you really manage that business logic that you need to help getting the data in correctly. So at this point, I've filled in, I have 12, so I'm on page 2. I can go back and I can see page 1. I've got all my iPhone 8s ready to go, and I'm going to kick this off. I have a couple of different ways you can send it to different participants. You can have a drop down and make a selection, or it's going to know automatically based on who I am and what some conditional information that I've selected in my metadata. It's going to know who to route it to. So I'm just going to put a comment in here, and then I'm going to save and route this on. And so what I'm going to do now, oh, and I did this on purpose. It says you can't submit the form unless there's validation. So remember when I said you had to fill in some information? So I know having talked to a lot of customers, they said a lot of different folks in the business just constantly provide or don't provide all the information. So what I wanted to show here is that you have to fill in whatever fields you deemed as required. So in this case, the region was required, and I needed to fill that in. So it doesn't even let me push it on or move on to the next person. So at this point, I'm gonna, hopefully I got all my information in there. So while that's working, I'm just gonna quickly show the workflow. Again, this is Winshuttle's tool about how we build these workflows. And in this case, we have 2 different stage gates. And I'm just gonna walk you through the plan ready. So if we look at this, I've just kicked off this starting the process, and then we can see here that I need 3 different departments to provide input. And then once all 3 of those have provided, it's going to go up to this master data group to review and post to SAP. That person can reject it. It's also going to, if they approve it, it's going to give a notification to the original project manager that kicked it off that action has been done. So I'll show you that a little bit later in the process. And then I'll also talk about they have the ability to reject this. So this is like a sub loop, if you will, to send it back if people don't provide all the right information. So what I'm going to do now is show So I'm going to bring over my email so you can see the different tasks. So now I'm going to kick that off, and there's those 3 different departments. In this case, it's supply planning, operational finance, and demand planning. I'm going to play the hat of all of these, but this is where the parallel editing can occur. And all 3 of these people could be at the same time in there contributing their data. So these emails is what they're going to get to notify them, hey, you've got a task assigned to you and you need to take action and add some data. So you see, again, some of that general information at the top. And then you see a breadcrumb down here. I'm actually being assigned to everything, but you can see what's been completed and a time, date, and stamp on when the tasks have been assigned. So here's my nifty little link that's now going to take me to my view so I can add my data. So again, this is the supply planning person, and they can come in, and that copy from information is up here. So this is all of the fields that they're responsible for. They have some general fields down here, but these are locked down, read only, and then they basically need to fill out all the purple fields in this case. So instead of having to type all this information 12 times because I've got 12 finished good, I can actually update based on this copy from to the entire table. So I'm going to click on this, and that's just taking all my copy from and pushing it down. But likewise, I could maybe say, oh, we're going to not use grams for this. We're going to use pounds in terms of our weight. And then I could select weight unit. I want to update the table. So when I click this, it's going to update pounds all the way through. So I don't have to edit that. But I also have the ability to make individual edits if I want to. So I can come in here and tweak whatever data that might need to be different. And then one other thing I want to just show, if I don't have, if I wanted to look up, so maybe this wasn't supposed to be piece, I want to use each. This little icon that I just clicked is a same thing as an F4 lookup in SAP. So this is giving me all the different options that I have in my system. So I may want to come down here and find the each. So I want to use each, and then I can just update my table with that if you want. So again, you can have those F4 lookups to go directly pull from SAP if you want. So I'm just going to...
One thing, yeah. Heather, just I wanted some clarification. A couple of times you mentioned parallel editing, and so that can be done in the context of you can send a task to multiple people or multiple departments, right? But you also talked about parallel editing in terms of editing many sort of records at the same time. That's right? You can do both.
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, it's a little hard to show for one person, but all 3 of those, if we just look back at this workflow, all 3 of these people could be in their form at the same time contributing data for the same records, these same 12 iPhone, 8s that I'm trying to set up. So they'll all be able to get it. I'll show you those other forms as I step through this, but they can be in it at the exact same time, which is just going to help, make things go faster, right?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so let me just, I'll just show this email again here. So I'll step through the demand planning, and oops, that's on the other screen here. So this is my email for demand planning. I'm just going to click on that task. And then this is again going to open a different view for the demand planner, and you'll notice that these fields are different, right? So they're not interested in the supply planning fields. So this is where I can update all of this information here. I can again make my edits and then pass this information on. So I'll just complete that, and then we have one more task that I'll show here, the operations finance group, and I'll just do that. And then I want to show you the master data view, which is a little bit different. So I'll just process this. Again, I'm just going to update this. Again, it's updating all pages if I have more than one page of data, and complete that. So at this point, I've walked through all three of those, and now it's going to go on to the master data. And so there is a couple of different ways you can manage those tasks. So what you saw me is I was getting email notification that I'd been assigned a task. But for the master data person, maybe they're going to get inundated with a lot of emails, and they're just going to come to this portal page and manage their task from this task list view here. So you can see this is where that master data is. I've just been assigned. I have other tasks that I've on here that are waiting for my execution, and you can see once they become late, there's kind of a visual that you can see. So we'll just click on this, and this is just a different way to kind of manage your task. I'm now going to have this master data view, and you can see all of those different, so this is where that parallel editing, it comes back and it knows how to collate which data goes with which record, and it pulls all three of those then in at the same time, because this master data wants to see everything, validate and check it, so they can even come in here and make tweaks if necessary. And then I had spoke earlier about validating against SAP. So before I do that, you also have the ability to reject. So maybe someone's decided we're not going to do the gold in the 64 capacity, so we want to reject those, and then I'm going to actually validate. So when this checkbox is checked, it's just validating against SAP. So again, this is going to be checking all of those rules and information that you already have in your SAP system. We can check against that. So there's no reason to maintain those roles separately. But again, as I mentioned, the business rules that's over and above that extra granularity of rules, you can certainly put in here to help make sure we get the data right. And then at this point, if everything looks good, I'm going to clear my validation, and then I'm going to actually post directly to SAP. So this is when, for most of you who have maybe seen Winshuttle in an Excel file, this probably looks very familiar to what you see in the Excel. So here's where it's, again, live creating those materials within SAP. So it's just seeing you. And you can, if you have a lot of data here, you can just have it queue up on a server and go do. You don't necessarily have to watch it. It's just helpful in a demo that you can see what's going on. So what I'd like to do is just show you, let's get my SAP system. So we just did 107, what is this, 648. And if I go in, you can see the views that I've just created. And so this information, again, came from my form. And if I go into my environment, you can see my name, and this is local time for me. This was a minute ago when I actually made that change. So this is putting in your data. I have the ability to conditionally reject it back. So if I saw that someone didn't provide all the information and I wanted them to go back, I can check one of these boxes to send it back to whoever I check it to. So not everybody has to get it again if they don't need to. If I do this rejection, it's just going to stop it. So maybe the project's died or not going to move forward. And then I can approve from here. And just a couple more things I'm going to share real quickly. When I rejected those items, when it goes on to the next phase, so I'll just open up one of these. So this is starting that next phase. I'm not going to walk through all of this because it's very similar to what you just saw from the first phase. But what I will show you is that they don't even then get a chance to add to those ones that were rejected. So you can see now I just have 1, 3. Those few that I had skipped don't even show up in that next phase. And then let me just show you that notification. So here is the notification email. So that email that I said would go back to the original project owner.